Welcome to Famous Amos.
Okay, today we are going deep. We're conducting what I can only describe as a forensic winner-take-all confrontation for the very soul of a podcast. We have sifted through a mountain of evidence. We're talking transcripts, audio logs, self-incriminating statements, all to get to the bottom of a truly devastating internal crisis.
And just to be crystal clear, this is not about a little dip in downloads or some bad reviews. No. We are talking about the structural, the physical, and the intellectual survival of the show itself. The stakes could not be higher.
You see, the show is being attacked from two different directions. On one side, you have Threat A, intellectual anarchy, this unpredictable conversational chaos that is unleashed by co-host Amy Sawyer. And on the other, you have Threat B, biological treason, a kind of sonic self-sabotage, all thanks to co-host Chris Roberts.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll lay out the case against the anarchist. Then, we'll dive into the evidence against the saboteur. After that, we're going to put them head-to-head in a final showdown, deliver our verdict, and then, most importantly, figure out what the real takeaway is from this whole mess.
All right, let's kick things off with Case A. The argument here is that Amy Sawyer is basically a conversational terrorist. Her brilliance, you see, is matched only by her complete inability to stick to any kind of plan. And that makes the show, well, perpetually unstable.
So, Exhibit A for the prosecution is the number 11. What does that mean? Well, the host has actually admitted on air that he writes an 11th emergency question for interviews. Think about that. It's an intellectual insurance policy. And he only needs it because he anticipates that his co-host is going to completely obliterate the planned flow of the conversation.
And this quote, this tells you exactly why he needs that insurance policy. Amy's questions aren't just good, they're too good. They're described here as tactical nukes that just vaporize the planned conversational universe. They force guests down these deep philosophical rabbit holes and leave the show's entire structure in smoking ruins.
But wait, the threat isn't just intellectual. Oh no, it's physical too. Meet the canine co-conspirator. In an incident we're calling the Laundry Room Gambit, a major interview was completely derailed by the, quote, very piercing howl of a beagle-pug mix. I mean, this just proves a fundamentally unstable recording environment, which basically makes the dog an accessory to conversational murder.
Okay, now let's pivot to Case B, the saboteur. The argument here is much simpler and honestly a little more visceral. It comes down to this. The host's inability to say no to cheese presents a direct biological threat to your listening experience.
And here it is, folks, the smoking gun. This is a confession, straight from the source. It is a legally binding admission of self-sabotage. Chris says, in his own words, that eating dairy gives him phlegm and messes with his voice, which, by the way, is the show's #1 product. He knows what's going to happen, and yet he keeps doing it.
Let's just break down the science of this whole sabotage operation, shall we? It's a simple 4-step path to destruction. 1. He consumes dairy. 2. His body produces phlegm. 3. That phlegm acts like this viscous coating on his vocal cords, which physically changes his acoustic resonance. And 4. His professional baritone turns into a literal product defect.
And what makes this even more damning is that he willfully defies the unanimous advice of world-class experts that he himself interviews on the show. You have Katrina Scullion warning that singers are athletes who avoid dairy. You have Christina Johnston giving the golden rule, eat after you sing. And Cassandra Penataro says she needs calm foods. This isn't ignorance. This proves his addiction is simply greater than his professionalism.
And for our final piece of evidence, his focus is totally shot. When a guest was telling this incredible, high-stakes story about performing for a head of state, you know what the host's only interjection was? Getting hungry? His metabolism completely took precedence over high art, which proves the internal distraction is just as damaging as the audible one.
So, the time has come for the showdown. We're about to put these two existential threats into a brutal head-to-head comparison.
And really, this is the crucial distinction. Amy's threat, it's structural. Her chaotic questions force him to use an emergency plan, sure, but as a listener, you can just hit the fast-forward button and skip it. But Chris's threat, that's auditory. It is baked right into the core audio file. You can't skip it. You can't avoid it. It is a failure of the medium itself.
Okay, we've heard the arguments. We've seen all the forensic evidence. It is time now to deliver the final unforgiving ruling.
The verdict is in. The single greatest existential threat to this show is, option B, the tragic, cheesy, phlegm-producing dairy addiction.
So why this verdict? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Amy's chaos, while it's totally destabilizing, is a kind of functional brilliance. It often makes the show way more interesting and unpredictable. Chris's vocal problem, however, is a fundamental failure. For a show that's all about audio, sound quality is everything, and when you degrade that, it's a direct loss of credibility.
Now, let's just step back from our little mock trial for a second. What can we, as curious learners, actually take away from this completely bizarre case about high-stakes performance?
You know, the real insight here is all about how we respond to pressure. This whole case shows two classic responses. One is over-preparation, and the other is self-sabotage. You've got one host developing an emergency question just to control the chaos, while the other leans right into a comfort habit that he knows undermines his own performance. It's a perfect illustration of how pressure reveals not just our strengths, but our most human and predictable vulnerabilities.
And that leaves us with one last provocative thought to chew on. Is Chris's constant talk about dairy actually a silent, desperate cry for help? Is this a man trapped by his own cheesy fate, just hoping that somebody, anybody, will intervene? The answer, much like his vocal cords after a plate of lasagna, remains murky and a little bit sticky.
Thanks everyone so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any videos. And I'll leave a link to my socials as well so you can stay updated on what I'm doing. See you next time!